Hey, this is David Johnson, running back of the Arizona Cardinals, and you're listening to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast, coming to you from the FantasyJocks.com studios with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
Welcome in.
What's going on, world?
Is that your way of not just saying America this time?
That's right.
It's very kind of you.
I self-corrected. Shout out to Europe. Looking good.
Canada.
Just Europe, though.
No, yeah, just Europe. Just Europe. The whole thing.
I still think you're against Australians. You're opposed to Australians. I don't know what it is.
My downtown friends, they're my southern BFFs.
Down under, not downtown.
Oh, they're furthest you can go for downtown.
Welcome to the podcast.
Just keep driving down, you'll get there.
Yeah, just keep driving south. Yeah, try that out. Try that out. We'll give you a couple weeks off. Welcome to the show. The Fantasy Footballers back again. Andy, Mike, and Jason. Monday, October 17th. We are fresh off of most of the Week 6 games. We have Monday Night Football tonight between the Cardinals and the New York Jets.
Yep.
Mike and I will be there.
Absolutely.
In person, for the analysis of the game, fantasy analysis purposes. I might, analyze some hot dogs as well.
I was going to analyze a double cheeseburger.
Right. And a lot of analysis. Jason's got a look on his face.
I wish I could go.
He wishes he could be there tonight. Not because of the game. He didn't have that look until the double cheeseburger.
No, it was the double cheeseburger.
Because you can't get those just anywhere. Oh, man. This is all just to make myself laugh and feel better. Fantasy football can be a cruel universe when Cam Meredith and Terrelle Pryor dominate on your bench and Doug Baldwin and A.J. Green give you a stinky cheese on your starting roster. But that's the game we play. That is the game we play.
It's the life we live.
It's the life we live. On today's show.
Hard knocks life,
Right. Hard knocks, yes. We've got this week's fantasy stud muffins. We've got pooped in your big boy pants. We got the Monday night preview. And it's going to be a very good one. Happy to say my almost upset of the week took care of business again. We got an overtime game out of it this time.
Yeah, very nice. You're on a roll with those.
Yeah, I think I am undefeated. Wait,
Ooh,
undefeated and almost upsets. And I'm arbitrarily deciding what makes that a victory.
Yeah, see, because you say if they win
by a
you
point,
you
yes.
win.
If they win by a point or lose in overtime.
2/3 of us agree with that, Mike. You keep your kids on the lawn, Mike.
That's right.
This is not an on the lawn situation.
Quick question of the day. As we always get the show started with a quick question. This one comes in off of Twitter at this is from Craig. Craig on Twitter. He says,
"Hey, Craig.
If someone in the league has not set their lineup, our commissioner feels it's his job to get in touch with them through a text message. Fair or foul? What say you, gentlemen?"
Yeah, I can understand both sides of the argument here in the sense that it's the owner's responsibility to know whether or not they're making their moves. But at the same time, it's the commissioner's responsibility to keep the league running well and that their owners are engaged and keep the league fair for everybody. What I would say is I think that it is the commissioner's responsibility to let someone know, hey, you forgot to set this. You shouldn't set it for him. You shouldn't make the move or suggest who to play or anything like that, but you should alert a player, say, hey, you got a guy that's not in your lineup ready to go. You might want to take a look at that.
I don't quite take that approach. I think the right thing to do as a commissioner is to have a weekly reminder post to the league as a whole, even across the board, letting people know to get, if you're in a league where this could happen, right? Like, ideally, you're not in a league where this is possible. But if you are, I think it crosses over a line when you're telling somebody, okay, you've got guys, as Jason just said, you've got guys on your bench that are ready. You might want to get in there.
Well, usually your motive or your application method is passive aggressive pictures on Facebook of players that Gronk smash.
I'll say this.
What say you, Mike?
If this is the status quo for the league, that the commissioner always does this, and the commissioner does not pick and choose when they are going to, or who they will alert that the lineup needs to be set, then it is what it is. I'm okay with it. It sounds like a league that needs to get their act together, though.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Weekly Rewind.
The Pittsburgh Post-Gazette reports Ben Roethlisberger has been diagnosed with a torn left meniscus, requires surgery. I believe the reports this morning said it was a cleanup procedure, and the optimistic viewpoint on Big Ben, which is the one I side with, I know Jason does as well, is that he will be available after the Week 8 bye. So we have Landry Jones starting in Week 7 against the Patriots. If I were a fantasy owner, I would grab the Patriots defense in week number 7.
Yeah, that's gonna be nice cooking with Landry Jones. After that week, that single week, then that is their bye week. They come back against Baltimore in a matchup that is not that great. It is on the road, and we have seen Big Ben struggle on the road.
I was going to say, before the injury, he was being road Big Ben.
So, you might not necessarily have him back in full until week 10, but I do believe, I mean, look, we've seen Big Ben play through all sorts of injuries.
He played through this.
Right, yeah, that play, he just...
Well, I mean, he was on the field.
Yeah, that's the definition of playing.
Well,
you're right. Thank you.
But I would say fantasy owners would have preferred that he did not.
It was, Big Ben on the road did what Big Ben does on the road. Drew Brees at home did what Drew Brees does at home. And we told you that. So hopefully you started or sat players based on that recommendation. Davante Adams exited with a possible head injury. I saw that play. Looked like a possible concussion, so stay tuned there.
You know who got 2 catches after that?
Oh, give me a break.
What do you mean?
Jeff Janis, his next year.
Here we go!
Yeah.
All right.
If you want to actually bring someone up who looked good that game, I would say if James Starks is out again, you might want to keep your eyeballs on Ty Montgomery.
Yes, completely agree.
Didn't he have 10 catches?
Yes.
Yeah, and many of them were actually, he was lined up in the backfield. He wasn't used as a running back, but he was lined up as a running back and then would run routes out of there.
Well, he did line up as a running back once and fumbled.
Yeah,
I mean, they handed him the ball and then he fumbled it.
He's a pretty big dude, 6'2", 216. So I agree that was more of a joke.
Surprising to see when he catches the ball and he can actually do something with it after the catch. Seems like they're having so much trouble on that offense. I guess that's another question for another time. But I mean, maybe we'll get into it in the pooped segment of the show. Jay Glazer reporting Starks underwent knee surgery and will be sidelined a few weeks. Jason was just talking about Ty Montgomery.
Be healthy, Eddie Lacy.
Phillip Dorsett exited with a hamstring injury, missed most of second half and overtime, so if you still have him, I think he's a clean cut at this point. Dwayne Allen left with an ankle injury. I think he might miss more time, and if he does...
Doyle rules.
Doyle rules. So, hey, Jack Doyle scored again this week, and so you have to pay attention to him if you need a streaming tight end option. We have bye apocalypses starting up here soon. It's a lot of bye weeks in the schedule. Dez Bryant says he'll be back after the bye.
Yeah, makes sense. There was rumors of him possibly playing this weekend. Did not happen, so getting a week off and then getting back into it makes total sense.
I mean, I just assumed he would play because that would be the wrong decision, and usually Dez Bryant and the Cowboys have really forced the issue too much in the past. Very happy he sat out.
But I wonder who his quarterback's going to be.
So here's a very concerning story to me. Doug Martin didn't practice today.
Sure.
And they are coming off the bye week. So this is your Monday practice off the bye. If you're expecting a guy back to be your lead running back off of the bye, why are you missing practice on Monday?
Oh, for sure. I mean, this is one of those things where the hope and the guess was he's coming back from the bye. But we have to remember he was injured, and it wasn't like that was a week where the suspension was up or he was coming off of PUP and he's able. No, that was just a hope. If he's not practicing, he's not going to play. So tomorrow, I'm sure we'll have Jacquizz Rodgers.
Wednesday. I think Wednesday will be if he misses that Wednesday practice, I was very aggressive going after Doug Martin. If he misses Wednesday, then I will start to be more concerned.
What if he's limited on Wednesday?
Then it's fine.
Yeah, if
you're automatically starting a guy after
Yes.
he's missed that amount of time, you're just locking and loading?
Against San Francisco? Yes.
Yeah, fair enough.
And
yeah, otherwise, Jaquiz Rodgers is someone you should absolutely pick up. He's available on most waivers.
Yeah.
Still pick him up.
I would say the Bucks also did sign the sensation, the old Atlanta Falcons sensation, Antone Smith. So maybe they're maybe they're getting ready. But Wednesday will be a big day for Doug Martin.
This week's Fantasy Stud Muffins.
All right, we said it before. Drew Brees lit it up at home. And you know what was impressive about Drew Brees in this game? Everything. Everything about Drew Brees was impressive.
His arm strength looked good.
To me, moving in the pocket and being able to put the ball on a line down the sideline over and over again really, really impressed me. He went for 465 and 4 with one pick, which was a pass up the seam that just overshot Brandin Cooks, who was, I believe, Jason, start of the week, right?
Yes, he was. And
did he do all right?
He was
That's
okay
good.
for himself.
Matthew Stafford, stud muffin this week, 23 for 31, 270 and 4 against the Rams. I don't know if we saw this kind of a week coming from Stafford, but Golden Tate got back on the scoreboard.
That was a big deal.
Putting points on the clock, as Jason would say.
Yep.
Stafford's been really kind of up and down this year.
He's been Matt Stafford.
All right, fair enough.
But
but what do you think about Stafford moving forward? I mean, is he in that top 10?
Yeah,
I
would really like to have Stafford on my team. Their defense, it's very similar to what you see with New Orleans. When you have a defense that gives up a lot of points every single game, and you've got a quarterback that has the ability to air it out, it's just good for fantasy in the sense that you're not going to be in this game script where you choose to run the ball all game. And even if they're in that game script, they can't. So for those reasons, I think Stafford will have more good games than bad ones. And really, when you say he's been back and forth, I look, he had that terrible week 4 against Chicago where he threw for 213 yards, 2 interceptions, no touchdowns. But every other week, he's been pretty darn fantastic.
Fantastic. Look, I've been saying it all week. I said it on Tuesday. I repeated it. I really didn't stop talking about it. Marcus Mariota, my stream of the week.
Your stream of the week, man.
17
what a good
for
call.
24, 284 and 3, and ran one in on the ground. I just told Jason the last 2 weeks he's been 7 carries on the ground for over 60 yards, which changes the equation for my start of the week, my streamer, my number one guy.
Yeah, and if you if he's out there, pick up Andy Dalton because Andy Dalton will play the Cleveland Browns next.
Right.
So
yeah, that's not a bad plan of action.
Yeah.
Just line them up.
Cleveland got back in this game.
Sure.
They got real close. They got within 2 points, which
that's always good.
That's called a Cleveland win. That's what that's called. It's the Browns. They're struggling, but Cleveland has the Cavs. You've got the.
Oh, you're saying don't feel bad?
Well, I'm just saying the Indians are playing great. They're in the ALCS. I mean, I kind of was expecting maybe the.
There's pieces in Cleveland that say that the future can be okay, and that's bright. That's pretty bright.
And that's pretty bright. That's a Cleveland win. All right, we have another, Tom Brady had a monster week. If you had the Brady-Gronk stack.
You bypassed somebody who we need to talk about.
Okay. Case Keenum.
You cannot ignore what Case Keenum has done.
27 for 32, 321 and 3.
And he ran one in.
Yeah. That's a monster week.
That's a big game.
And that's actually, I think, 2 of the last 3 weeks where he's been a top performer, and that's so weird. I mean, put it this way. One of our writers pointed out on our Slack channel that I was the second highest rated analyst on him this week at 18, and I didn't feel good about it. I was like,
you felt embarrassed.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, I did have him up at 18, and even though I was right, I was like,
but maybe it's not so much Case Keenum, but we talked about playing against the Browns. Start your quarterback against the Lions.
Yeah, seriously. I was just thinking about this too. Brock Osweiler, I know he brought the team back last night, and we didn't talk about that game. But is Brian Hoyer better than Brock Osweiler?
100%.
Yeah,
yes.
They might have wanted to keep Hoyer.
Well, I totally get what the Texans did.
Sure.
When you're trying to win a Super Bowl and you watch your quarterback just just smeared in feces in the playoffs, you got to move on. I mean,
yeah, and you take that stab at a guy that you think could be great who's out there, because it doesn't happen from time to time. But so far,
you shouldn't have given him $72 million.
Brock Osweiler so far has looked pretty atrocious. He came back last night, and in the fourth quarter, in overtime, he did what he needed to do to get it done, and really that was on the back of one long pass play.
Did you hear, though, who they signed?
No, tell me.
Texans tight end. You didn't hear this?
No, I didn't.
Hakeem Olajuwon.
Then they can finally – yeah, I posted
right?
on Twitter. I said if all the Texans wide receivers were 7 feet tall, this offense would be very good.
Olajuwon starting next week. They got Mutombo coming in for a workout.
Why doesn't someone just tell Brock –
and Ewing will be here next week.
Why doesn't someone tell Brock, hey,
he's available.
Tim Duncan is available.
Throw at everyone's feet.
Right, because it will end up right in the numbers.
Just throw at their feet every time, and you're fine.
It's like my golf swing. I have to aim completely off the side of the course. I'm aiming for that tree, and then, right down the middle.
There you go.
It doesn't feel good, but you end up in the right place.
I do what has to be done.
That's right. All right, I'm going to read off these guys. You choose who you want to talk about. Tom Brady, Cam Newton. Eli Manning, also known as Odell Beckham Jr., had a good week.
Yeah.
Matt Ryan, Andrew Luck.
I say Matt Ryan.
You know, Matt Ryan – balling out right now. Leading the league in yards.
We keep saying every week we give Matt Ryan a condition. Like, okay,
you got to beat Denver in Denver.
If he could be good against Denver on the road, maybe I'll think about starting him every week. Okay, if he could be good in Seattle on the road, maybe I'll think about.
I hope nobody goes back.
Start Matt Ryan every week. We're at the point. You got to start him every week.
I hope nobody goes back and listens to that 1 week of me just ripping Matt Ryan a new one at the beginning, just saying how bad he is and how much look, he's surprising everybody. And their defense. Their defense is so much better than it was a year ago.
Will there be a collapse like last year? I mean,
no,
they started out
because
6-0.
Their defense is good enough. You're not leaning on – now, they obviously lost this past week, but you're in Seattle. You played it so close, and honestly –
you should have won.
You should have won the game, or could have, should have, but – look, the defense is good enough. Matt Ryan cannot be put in the position where we saw Matt Ryan struggle a ton. Was this position where he is stuck? What do we used to say about him? He's a bad garbage time quarterback.
Yeah. Right,
Matt Ryan's a bad garbage time quarterback. He throws interceptions. Don't put him in the position where he has to throw for 600 yards. Let him do that over the course of a game with the right offensive game plan. You got 2 great running backs in the mix here, and Julio Jones. That's all you seem to need.
And Sanu is at least capable. That's the problem last year was they had Julio. At wide receiver,
That's it.
They had Julio.
And Tevin Coleman missed most of the year, and the defense was not as good as they are right now.
It's a much different offense.
Yeah, the condition I gave him this last week was that if Tevin Coleman can catch 132 yards again, then he would be good. Tevin Coleman, 7 yards. And so Matt Ryan was still pretty good.
We'll talk about Tevin Coleman very soon.
That's fine.
Mr. Must Start. Andrew Luck, Cody Kessler?
Yeah.
Kessler and Keenum and Hoyer. It was
a weird week, man.
And I believe both of our streams,
Dak Prescott,
Tyrod Taylor and Dak Prescott were top 12 as well.
This was the week where I officially am in the Dak Prescott cannot leave the starting lineup camp.
Yeah.
I do not believe anymore that you can disrupt. I mean, this team went into Green Bay, dominated, really. I mean, they owned that game. Ezekiel Elliott's amazing. I mean, he's just so good. And Dak Prescott really just gives you confidence in, I think Romo offers you, several things different than Prescott. I think you have more big play potential with Tony Romo. You have the ability for him to put up these monster games. But Romo also had those mistakes that just killed you and broke your back as a team. And I don't know, Prescott has been so impressive. 3 touchdowns in this game, smart decision-making. Finally, the interception streak ended.
I will say this. The nice thing about not being a Dallas fan is no matter what, if the Cowboys do not win the Super Bowl, they made the wrong choice. And that's the whole entire media firestorm is going to be, why didn't you play quarterback X?
Well, and I was even thinking that type of thought when we talked about Osweiler and Hoyer. Almost every team doesn't win the Super Bowl, and whatever decision they made is the wrong one because of that. You said, Hoyer stunk in the playoffs. You make a change because you let your fan base know you care about winning and you want to make a change. So let's get into the wide receivers now, guys. Odell Beckham Jr.
My
was
goodness.
limping his way to 2.5 points. First, he was negative, and then off the field with an injury.
Yeah, Odell Beckham. I get the report that Odell Beckham is out, and I'm very unhappy.
And then, ba-boom. And, he almost cost his team the game with a penalty.
Yeah.
Because, it's all about Odell Beckham Jr., who after every score now goes and lays down with the kicking net.
The kicking net, yeah. The penalty was he took his helmet off, right?
Yes, the penalty
Correct.
was that he took
Which
the helmet
I'm just
off.
saying
the
that was
kicking net is
that's
just an
stupid,
example
yeah.
of his
Exactly.
personality. And the reality is this. Look, Odell Beckham, he is great. He almost cost their team the game. Instead, he is the single-handed
The only reason
they won that game, and he is great. So you want to know what you need to do? You need to go get your Odell Beckham signed jersey over at Pristine Auction.
There is one up today.
Oh, let's get it for here, please. Anyways, we want to thank our sponsor. Look, Pristine Auction, those guys are amazing. Their website is the place where you need to make that your homepage. Every day you check out these daily auctions. There is so much incredible stuff. They've got signed jerseys. They got signed helmets. They got signed amazingly large, big canvas pictures of special moments with things written on them. It's just, look, if you're looking for a special gift, if you're looking to deck out your living room or where you watch games or any number of things like that, Pristine Auction has the authority that they have on every signature, making sure that it is absolutely legit. The guys over there we've met, we've had lunch with, they are great. If you haven't yet checked out Pristine Auction, you have to go to it. It's Pristine auction.com. Check them out, see what's over there, and if you want to get a gift for someone that's not a sports fan.
Yeah, I love that.
You could get stuff for you can get coins and collectibles and comic books. Just go check out what they have. They're amazing. You will not regret it, and you won't believe how cheap you can get some of this cool stuff.
We also want to thank today's sponsor, SeatGeek. You've heard us talk about them before as well, and Mike and I are heading to the Monday Night Football game tonight.
Compliments of SeatGeek.
Yeah, we hopped in the app. It took about 3 minutes, and we couldn't believe even though we talk about this, we couldn't believe how fast that was. It was like Mike's like, all right, we got tickets. I'm like, all right, we're going. So there you go. That's why I'm wearing my Patrick Peterson jersey today. Look, SeatGeek is the smartest, easiest way to find tickets for the football games you want to see up close in person this season, and there is nothing like being at the stadium. We always try to get out. As fantasy analysts, we have to watch the Sunday games, but any Thursday night, Sunday night, Monday night game, we try to get out there, and SeatGeek is the easiest place to get guaranteed seats you want for a great value. So our listeners get $20 off their first SeatGeek purchase. To get your rebate, go to your app store. Download the free SeatGeek app, go to the settings tab, and click the add a promo code and enter the promo code Footballers. SeatGeek will then send you $20 after you've made your first SeatGeek purchase, so download the free SeatGeek app and enter the promo code Footballers today. And now we can finally talk about Kenny Britt.
Yes. Kenny Britt.
Years ago, I drafted Kenny Britt in the 7th round when he was a Titan, and I threw him out there in week 1. He scored 3 touchdowns, and then the next week he tore his ACL. And so we've seen what Kenny Britt was going to be, could be. Seems like, half physical injury, half mental injury has held him back. But, man, he's a big boy, and he went for 7, 136, and 2 this week.
And we'll talk about him a little bit later. So let's talk about Brandin Cooks.
Oh, you took the air right out of that.
Yeah, well.
You sunk it. So what you're saying is
I'm saying that.
Wait
tuned.
for your Britt moments.
Yes.
Brandin Cooks, 7 for 173 and 1. This is what makes Brandin Cooks great to own. The last few weeks is what makes it difficult to own.
Yep. I will say I did not believe in him even with the
Do you
plus
play
matchup.
him at home all the time?
Yes.
Is that the equation?
Every single home game you play him.
Put him on the track.
Look, actually, let's hold off there because I will say this. I believe they have a home game coming up against Denver. And in that game, I play him. In that game, to me, if I have other good options, if I'm deciding between a Marvin Jones and a Brandin Cooks, I'm going to go with Marvin Jones if they're playing, Denver.
Oh, it was a funny moment for me where I had talked about on the Periscope of why I'm just not sure that Brandin Cooks is there yet for me as a wide receiver. I watch him and I don't know, something is missing for me. And I'm like, but you know what? He is very, very fast.
Sure.
And then on his huge touchdown, it's just the commentators like, wow, he's very fast.
That's what he's got, man.
Yeah, because that's he turned on the Jets and you couldn't catch him. So that's where his value comes from, which won't hit every single week.
But when it hits.
Yeah, it's very large.
Yeah, he'll win your week. Golden Tate, I almost signed him. On Sunday morning.
Oh, could have,
saw him on the waiver wire. 8 for 165 and a touchdown. Back in business for the year.
You know what is interesting there? I think he benefited. He had a couple downfield targets, but he's had that all year long. He looked like he had his mojo going. But they usually throw a ton of balls to the running back. And without Theo Riddick there, Justin Forsett was not very involved. Zach Zinner was the lead back, and he was not very involved in the passing game. The receptions, I think that he benefited from the absence of Theo Riddick with extra targets and
I agree with you.
Situations like that.
I think you're absolutely right. Terrelle Pryor, 2 touchdowns, 9 for 75.
This dude is a beast, man. When I watched how terrible the throws were that he had to catch, I mean, he has some wide, like there was an important 4th and 5 or something near the end of the game where they ran this. They sell out to run and just to buy open a one-on-one situation with Terrelle Pryor, and they get him wide open in the middle of the field, and Cody Kessler runs around and throws it directly into double. He forces him to move into double coverage. But then Terrelle Pryor just goes up over the top of the guys and grabs it. He's a beast. And so when you've got a guy that's got that kind of freakish athleticism, you're safer in some of these situations.
What is the impact of McCown and Corey Coleman's return? Because to me, I don't buy into Pryor losing value with Coleman. I mean, if the offense is improved, look, you still had this monster game from Pryor, but he only had 75 yards, and they lost, and a lot of this was last-ditch effort here. What is your thought, Mike, on Coleman and McCown?
McCown, I think, improves Terrelle Pryor. I love Josh McCown as my fantasy, or when I have a wide receiver and Josh McCown's throwing the ball, I love it because he just throws it up, and he's a much better quarterback than Kessler. We know that McCown has a monster strong arm, so I don't think Pryor loses value. Coleman, he had that one big game. I totally get it, but he's still a rookie. This missed time is not going to help that out, so I'm fine still with Pryor.
The only thing that I would say is we've only seen one game with both of those guys there, with Josh McCown and Corey Coleman there. Corey Coleman had a monstrous, huge game. In that game, Terrelle Pryor was 3 for 32 and no touchdowns. So on the heels of this monster game and with Terrelle Pryor being really good, if you can get top value for him in a trade, personally, because I think things aren't going – right now he is the center piece of that offense, and there is just no other option. There will be other options as the season goes on, so I'm willing to look at moving him.
All right. Kendall Wright had a big game. We'll talk about Cole Beasley, by the way, in a minute as well. He was one of our stud muffins of the week. Julio Jones, Kendall Wright, last 2 names on my list here. Monster game from Kendall Wright. He only played a limited amount of snaps in this game. It was very low. It was a very low amount of snaps. He was 8 for 133 and a touchdown.
So you're saying you're not buying into Kendall Wright moving forward?
Well, I'm just saying the potential for outlier is there because of the matchup, right? We just talked about the fact that the Browns are a sieve, and because of the very limited, you had Delanie Walker basically did nothing. You had a complete goose, I believe, from Tajay Sharp.
Walker.
And you didn't have Wright on the field very much. I'm not saying he can't be something, but between the injury history and the low snap count, I'm just kind of throwing it up there as the outlier week for now.
Could be. You could also argue that his low snap percentage is because he's been coming off of injury, and it's going to continue to ascend. And if he ends up playing, 70, 80% of snaps, that he would be what we had hoped Tajay Sharp could be. And we've seen it in the past from Kendall Wright. So it could be an outlier worth at least just keeping your eyes on.
Wright was banged up on that touchdown catch. If you happen to see it, because he had to go up to get it and landed really hard.
Has he ever not been banged up
just
on a play?
saying.
Yeah, the scale is heavily tipped on the outlier side for me, only because Andre Johnson, Rashard Matthews, Tajay Sharp, Delanie Walker, and DeMarco Murray on an offense that just doesn't pass the ball a lot. So
sure.
We'll see. We'll see. Running backs, Shady, the slippery fish.
The slippery fish.
Man, he's good.
He was going downstream this time.
Right.
He wasn't swimming upstream. He was just going super fast.
I wasn't watching that game, and I keep getting these texts, and it's like, oh, LeSean McCoy going crazy, going buck nasty, as Mike would say.
Because he was.
And then I get a message that his season's over.
Well, it was, I believe, in fact, I said, Shady McCoy's dead, and then, well, because he went down in a heap. The helmet was off immediately. He was clutching at the knee.
And the play itself looked pretty bad.
Yeah,
the guy runs right into the knee, bends it sideways.
But he went full Paul Pierce on us, where this was a catastrophic injury. Everybody, I'm talking all of Twitter, was, oh, crap. Like, Shady was tearing it up, went down, goes off to the side. He's able to kind of walk gingerly off. Then he starts doing drills on the side. You're like, what is happening right now? And then he went back in the game. Tore it up some more
and scored again. So
it was ridiculous.
19 for 140 and 3. Everybody saw this coming. Ajayi, 25 for 204 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also, nobody saw that coming.
Shout out to our man, our production manager Brooks, who I had to play this week, who played Ajayi, so he saw it coming, and I had to deal with that. It's nonsense.
I will say, on the scope, I was asked directly, do you have concerns about Arian Foster's workload? It's like, not really. I mean, I feel like they waited for him to come back. He's not going to come back till he's healthy. The team has shown, Adam Gase has shown over weeks that he does not care for Ajayi's play. And then Ajayi was the guy, so that got
3 carries.
Many apologies for that.
3 carries for Foster, 25 for Ajayi, and they won at home against Pittsburgh.
And Pittsburgh is
it's the NFL.
Pittsburgh is a solid run D too. I mean, it was very bizarre. So let's say Ajayi moving forward.
Ajayi moving forward is one of many running backs on the team.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm not.
You're not saying he's the starting running back?
No, I'm not.
No.
Interesting.
He has not won me over with that performance. It was a very good performance. I need to see it again. If he's on waivers and I have,
people are going to have to make the decision this week.
I mean, I would stash him on your bench, see what happens.
Okay. There you go. I'm not going to start him next week.
Now, Terrance West was 23 for 87 and 2 touchdowns, 4 for 36 in the air. Javorius Allen had absolutely 0 touches, and Dixon was very limited. Terrance West, at this point, we need to have a conversation about him for fantasy owners. Is he a running back 2 the rest of the season?
Yeah, at least.
Yes. Is he a 1?
Maybe.
I think he's a high-end 2.
They seem very committed to him now.
And he looks fantastic.
He looks great.
I mean, now with him in the passing game, 4 receptions, he's a weekly start.
Talk about turning your career around.
Yeah. Man. All you got to do is get out of Cleveland.
Would you rather have Terrance West or Jonathan Stewart rest of the season?
Ooh.
Both of them had 2 touchdowns this week.
I'll still go with Stewart.
I think I will as well. The injury concern would be the only reason.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Stewart, historically, back in the D'Angelo Williams days, Stewart was used a ton in the passing game. They do that. They don't do it at all now. Fozzie Whitaker comes in for those passing downs at times. Stewart had 0 catches this week. That's the only thing that's kind of frustrating about being a Stewart owner is you need goal line carries, or he doesn't give you.
And Cam Newton siphons those frequently.
I brought this up to Jason this week.
Talking through this, I think because it's close, but I think Terrance West would be the better player to own.
Interesting.
Because I've said this for a long time that those Cam Vulture touchdowns they really limit Jonathan Stewart. And if Jonathan Stewart's mostly just a between the 20s guy, Terrance West is used in more situations. It's close. Yeah, I'll say that. At the very least, I'm 50-50 on that.
What I said to you this week came to fruition. They got on the goal line, and Jonathan Stewart's number was called.
Yeah, because you said that the worries over the concussion, they weren't going to call Cam as much around the goal line.
Fair.
Yeah, I think that they were going to want to keep him a little safer. And then if Stewart succeeds doing that, which he did this week, that changes the equation.
So how does their coaching change with Cam now that they're 1-5 and firmly out of the playoffs? Do they continue?
I wouldn't call them firmly out of the playoffs.
I just did.
All right. They look. Did you see Cam walk out of the? He walked out of the press conference again. And he was moping. And next question. Look, it's tough. You see, when a guy is braggadocious and has so much bravado and celebration, people want to see the other side. And look, he looked like the Super Bowl loss. He was not happy, walked out of the equation. I think he's good enough to get everything back on track. I'm personally in the market for Cam Newton. I mean, that's kind of my mindset because I think look, he's still in this loss, put up 27 for 47 for 322 and 2, and a 2-point conversion. So it's tough. So we talked about Terrance West. James White had a monster game through the air, 8 for 47 and 2 through the air. He's a must start every week in any PPR format. You know, what is he in a standard league? A 3? A flex?
Yeah, it's definitely lower. The question for him, we have time, so maybe this conversation is a bit premature, but the Deion Lewis factor or do the Patriots say, okay, James White's playing great. We don't rush Deion Lewis back. We let him take the season off.
We're going to have a lot more information this week because Deion Lewis should now be eligible to practice.
Sure.
And so we'll see whether or not
we'll push that forward.
Yeah, that's one of those things as a fantasy owner. You don't want to overreact to the future. And I've noticed that with the way I'm thinking about Jordan Howard. Jordan Howard was somebody that I was like, well, he's got a bye week and a couple tough matchups coming up, so maybe I need to go sell him. But it's like when your workload is heavy.
There's very few guys with that.
Yeah, so I just think you can't overreact there. All right, I'm going to give you some other names, talk about who you want to talk about. Spencer Ware, Lamar Miller, finally.
Yeah.
Goodness.
I got half of them. I called for an Alshon TD. We almost got there.
Christine Michael
could have had 3 touchdowns. Well, if he wasn't getting checked for a concussion.
Matt Jones and Ezekiel Elliott.
Matt Jones.
16 for 135?
He looked pretty good.
So fast.
Matt Jones. The curious case of Matt Jones. I don't know.
Do you want to?
No.
I think, well, you know what?
No,
it's week 5.
It's week 5, yeah.
You have been wrong 5 times.
Let's give
not
it
5
not
times.
5 times because Matt Jones
Certainly
has had
not.
some bad games. But let's give it a couple more weeks.
Yes.
And if he's good for a couple more weeks,
he'll get one.
You will need to apologize to Matt Jones.
It might be
Lamar
too late,
Miller finally delivered on the promise of this season. 24 for 149 and 1, 3 for 29 and a touchdown through the air. And then Spencer Ware had a monster game, broke his I believe his yardage mark for his career. 24 for 131 and 1 in that rainy day against the Oakland Raiders defense. Jamaal Charles was good. He scored. I believe Ware this week out-touched him 2-1.
Yes.
We were having a heated debate before the show about Ware and Charles, and I think it has to be brought up because fantasy owners
want to know what to do.
They want to know what to do with these guys. And look, it sounds like you're gonna have to side with myself or with Jason.
No. I don't think that's true because here's what I'm doing with both of those guys personally. I'm willing to buy both of those guys. I don't think that Jamaal Charles
disagree with that.
Is not worth owning. But what I had been saying beforehand is, I was almost tempted to make Spencer Ware my rising star of the week because look, once Jamaal Charles is back, Spencer Ware is worthless has been the narrative in my brain. That's been like coming into the season.
And the public's brain as
well.
Yeah,
sure. I think that's what people think. And what I am starting to realize, how slow they've brought Jamaal Charles back, how good Spencer Ware has been for them on the season, how important to that team. The past where they used to have Jamaal Charles really, infuriatingly. Who was the other running back there? Thomas?
Michael Thomas?
No.
Wait. You're talking about Thomas. You're going all the way back to Thomas Jones?
Yes.
Are you thinking Niall Davis?
No. I was thinking of Thomas
when
Jones.
Charles was splitting.
Yeah, and Thomas Jones was the one, but Jamaal Charles scored more fantasy points. I could see that kind of a situation happening here because Spencer Ware, why would you take him off the field? Why would you not have that be like a 50-50 backfield?
Yeah, it could be a Coleman-Freeman split where both guys have value. I agree with your first. Maybe we are in more agreement. I agree with the contention. You can buy both because Spencer Ware can be bought as a handcuff right now.
Right.
Maybe not after this week though. Rob Gronkowski, Coby Fleener. We are not flying through these. Coby Fleener started the week 6 for 74 and a
Russian
touchdown.
Superstar.
He also had a rushing touchdown on a 4th down end around for the Saints, but scored twice. Big game, and then Gronk smash. 7 for 162 and a touchdown. He's pretty good.
He was humiliating them.
Amari Cooper had a great week. Cameron Meredith had a great week. Torrey Smith had a long ball from Mr. Kaepernick.
Yep.
Did you see what the Buffalo Bills players came out and said?
Yeah, that he stinks.
He's like, Kaepernick's done. He's terrible.
Yeah.
Oof. That's brutal.
All right, we're moving on.
Raising Cane's Rising Stars of the Week.
Looks like a trifecta of wide receivers in our Raising Cane's Rising Stars of the Week this week. In this segment, we like to tell you about a guy that performed well, so they qualify as a stud muffin, but we also want to extend their value. We want to tell you these are guys we're buying into. These are not the, as I talked about Kendall Wright, a one-week outlier in my mind. And so I'm going to kick it off. I'm going to go with, he was my start of the week last week, trepidatiously. Cameron Meredith is my rising star. Second straight week of 113-plus yards. This week, 11 catches on 15 targets. And once again, Eddie Royal has his weekly injury. Now it's a toe to go with the calf. Look, Brian Hoyer's throwing for over 300 yards a week, and it ain't going to Alshon Jeffrey.
So Jeffrey had a good game. But
Jeffrey did have a good game, but I'm just saying it's not exclusively to one guy. Cameron Meredith is showing that he can do it, and Hoyer's basically saying, hey, I'm going to throw to whoever's open on this play. So do you buy into Cameron Meredith?
Yes. Absolutely.
Yes.
Not only do I buy into the narrative of backup quarterback is there, going kind of more with the backup wide receiver, plus Eddie Royal is gone, but I buy into the tape. When I watch Cameron Meredith, I'm surprised at his size and his speed. He looks good on the field. He was undrafted, right?
Cameron Meredith, I believe, was undrafted, yes.
So, I mean, for usually when I watch an undrafted guy who's playing, he doesn't really pass my eyeball test, but he passes my eyeball test here. So I do agree with you on Cameron Meredith. Worth owning, worth playing. Mike, why don't you take it off?
I'm going to kick it off here with, I've affectionately started to call him the Dallas #1 wide receiver, and these guys just hate it.
I find it amusing.
All right, but that's Cole Beasley, the heart ring. Look, Cole Beasley, in a half-point PPR situation, has been under 10 points once, and that was when he scored 9 points. Like, Cole Beasley is kind of that, you're like, oh, haha, he had a good game. Oh, he had another good game. Oh, wait, he had another good game. You got to start paying attention to this trend. Cole Beasley is a weekly start. I'm not saying he's a superstar, but I'm saying his floor is extremely safe. When Dez comes back, Cole Beasley's floor will be extremely safe because he doesn't play Dez Bryant's position. That's Butler. Butler will be gone once Dez Bryant is here. The question for me is Romo versus Dak. And even when it was Romo and other backups last year, we saw Cole Beasley be effective. We saw the monster game with the 2 touchdowns. I'm not expecting that. But when you're talking, there's people out there, you got to start a third wide receiver every single week. And Cole Beasley is available in 55% of leagues. So people are not picking him up and playing him when they should be.
Both of his touchdowns came on goal line situations, play action, misdirection. He's a guy who gets separation. He always has. So now that he's more integral to this offense and to Dak Prescott, I look, you can't argue with the numbers.
Yeah, the offense definitely seems conducive to his skill set. My guy is a guy that we talked about earlier. It's probably no surprise. It's Kenny Britt. Now, earlier this week, I give credit to Mike here. Mike brings him up to me in the office. He goes, you know who will surprise you when you go look at their numbers? And I was like, who? And he goes, Kenny Britt. Go check him out. And I go look at his numbers, and I was really surprised.
Because if you're on the Rams and you're a pass catcher, we've buried you.
Yeah, exactly. Because and you want to know a big part of that? The Rams through the first 2 weeks of the season, they averaged 4.5 points scored as a team. They managed 4.5 points per game in those first 2 games. The last 4 games, they've averaged over 24 points a game. And the thing is look, when I'm looking at Kenny Britt, I thought if he had touchdowns, he would be, one of the guys higher up on our waiver shows and things like this. How many games has Kenny Britt been under 4 receptions? 0 on the season. How many times has he been under 50 yards on the season? Once. How many times has he been 75 yards or more through 6 games? 4 of them. 4 of 6 games he's been over 75 yards. This game he got involved with 2 touchdowns. I'm not saying
they were man touchdowns as well.
Well, he is a big athletic dude, and when you watch, you're like, man, he needs to go to Kenny Britt more. So I'm not saying, look, you got to grab him, you got to start him every game, but he shouldn't be on waivers.
No.
He should be owned because he has shown in the past that he can get it done in fantasy. Case Keenum is going more and more to him. He is capable of getting it done, and if the trend continues, then we got to start him. So he's rising to me.
All right, those were the Raising Cane's Rising Stars of the Week. And don't forget, game day tastes better with Raising Cane's tailgates full of fresh 24-hour marinated hand-battered chicken fingers and that fresh brewed sweet tea.
Woo! So good.
So visit raisingcanes.com, check out your nearest location. Time to move on.
Pooped in his big boy pants.
I have a note here in our show doc from Brooks, I believe, that says bolded players are super poopers. So you don't just have pooped in their big boy pants. You have a super pooper.
You have the blowout.
I would call Russell Wilson a super pooper this week because you're at home in what seemed to be just a gorgeous matchup off the bye week against Atlanta and didn't throw for any touchdowns.
He's still hobbled. You can see it when he's moving, and
the weather was a factor there as well.
Sure. And I'll say this is where in fantasy football the touchdown sucks. It can be glorious and it can be terrible. Russell Wilson, 270 yards. That's a fine game.
That's a Keenum.
That's a fine.
That's what we call a Keenum.
No, because Case Keenum scored 4 touchdowns.
No, that's what I mean.
But so Russell Wilson with
anybody can have 270 yards passing.
So it's if you look through this list, the situation is lack of touchdowns, and it can be really brutal for a quarterback like Brian Hoyer, over 300 yards again, no touchdown. So you're like, wow, he was bad for fantasy, except he was a good quarterback. So that's just, sorry for my tangent there, that the touchdown could be a cruel mistress sometimes.
Yeah, Big Ben had a tough game. Carson Wentz fell down to earth here. No touchdowns for Carson Wentz. And Alex Smith had a bad game. The guys I want to talk about specifically are Aaron Rodgers and Derek Carr. Now, Derek Carr, first drive of the game, comes out, touchdown pass. It was raining. Maybe we throw that out. It plays Kansas City where Andy Reid is 15-2 off of the bye. So maybe a tougher matchup than we thought, but he was, Derek Carr had 2 fumbles and an interception and only 1 touchdown. Is he a must-start every week? I mean, would you rather have Carr or Stafford rest of the season, I guess?
Oh,
because before this week, Carr was the number 3 fantasy quarterback.
Yeah, and I had said before this week that Derek Carr hasn't really played a defense, where we saw this last year. Carr can light it up. If you listened to the podcast last year, we were frequently saying,
send in the
car, because when he's in a plus matchup, Derek Carr gets it done. But when he's in a negative matchup, this is what he does. He hurts your team tremendously after building this base of confidence. So I've not moved him into must start yet, but between him and Stafford, I would really have to look at the schedules to know who I want more.
I like both guys. I think both guys are worthy of starting in the vast majority of matchups.
I'll agree with that.
I don't blame him on this one. If you watch that game, this was the rainiest game I can remember seeing. Weather
was bad.
Absurd. So
a lot of slipping around.
Yeah, and it's not like it's not like Alex Smith had a good, there just wasn't a good offensive game.
All right, and now the last guy from the quarterback pooped segment, a super pooper indeed.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers.
You mean Marin Rodgers?
No, I mean Aaron Rodgers. You were trying to say meh?
Meh.
Yeah. I noticed you've done a lot of puns lately, Mike. Like I saw one on Twitter last night for Brock, but you tried to change it to like Bluck. Like he threw a lucky pass. And
no. That was Andrew Luck threw a terrible interception. And I was inferring, did Andrew Luck throw that, or was that Brock Osweiler?
Yeah. Sometimes
you gotta follow the Twitter in real time.
All I'm saying is that
jokes are hard.
Yeah, that's basically what I'm saying. Is they're not good. Aaron Rodgers, 31 for 42, 294, 1 touchdown. Look, that's like the most yards he's thrown for in a long time. Still an underwhelming fantasy performance at home. Very disappointing game. And now, I told Mike, I was texting him, I said, I no longer think it's just the receivers. You've had, now in the last 2 years, you've had Montgomery and Cobb, Nelson, James Jones, and Richard Rodgers, and Jared Cook. And you've got enough. They're not all failing to get separation on every single play. I don't know what is going on with Rodgers.
And his offensive line is giving him as much time as humanly possible. So either every single wide receiver stinks or something is a little bit off. And you saw a couple, poor throws. And so, here's the thing, though, is I'm not jumping off Aaron Rodgers. I'm not selling Aaron. Well, if I can sell him for the perceived superstar value.
You always can.
But I would do that with any quarterback.
You could do that all the time with Aaron Rodgers. You can always sell him for the name value. It doesn't go away. Think about it in your mind right now. Somebody offers you Aaron Rodgers. What do you think you're getting?
Well, I think I'm getting one of the top 5 fantasy quarterbacks rest of season.
Yeah. And you're always going to think that. Because that's what happens when a guy has been that for many, many years. And I'm not saying, look, he's going to have his games like against the Lions where he came out and he threw like 4 first-half touchdowns on like 100 yards, and it works out. It's not the consistent, every week, automatic Aaron Rodgers you used to know and love. I don't know if it has to do with the play calling that went from McCarthy to off of McCarthy to back to McCarthy. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the lack of a running game because the depth and the pain, the injuries there, Stark's out and Lacey hurt. I don't know what it is, but
the next
it's
3
worthy
weeks,
of an alarm to me.
The next 3 weeks, he's got Chicago, Atlanta, and Indianapolis. He should be able to do some damage. If he does there, you're going to be happy with him. If he doesn't, then
I don't like him against Chicago. That's for sure.
I do.
Interesting. Very interesting. Chicago's been so good against the pass.
Yeah.
Blake Bortles did not have a good week.
No, we did not.
Running back, Mark Ingram, 900 points on the board. Mark Ingram went 16 for 55, no touchdowns. Wasn't impressive to me.
This is what I was saying. I had been talking to you about Jonathan Stewart, and I had said there's a situation that could happen where these two teams just start airing it out, going back and forth, and Stewart might not get his touchdowns. Well, he got his touchdowns, but what happened was Mark Ingram on the other side of the ball, they were just airing this thing out, throwing for a cajillion yards, and it didn't work out in Mark Ingram's favor. He still got 16 carries and 2 catches, combined 60 yards. You're not happy with him, but he didn't completely crap your team.
It's one of the tough things about the Saints is because you have – think about in your mind what you consider there to be fantasy options. You have Cooks, Snead, Fleener, Michael Thomas.
I love Michael Keaton.
Mark Ingram. You even have Tavares Cadet in the passing game. You have all these different options, and it doesn't work out for all of them every week. It can't. So this was a week where Ingram didn't crap your team, but he didn't help you. Maybe he did because he's in the poop segment. Eddie Lacy, 17 for 65. He looked really good for most of the game, but
he's still battling that ankle.
Has he scored this year? I do not think he has a touchdown. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I think he has 0 touchdowns.
I'm gonna vet that one. I feel like he has 1.
Eddie Lacy?
Yeah.
I think you might be right there.
I think he has no touchdowns on the
year. He has no touchdowns on the ground.
That'll make it tough.
That will change. Look, he's getting enough carries every week. People said the same thing about Lamar Miller. If you're getting 16, 17, 18 carries a game, you're the only running back there, you're not going to go touchdownless. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. I don't look at Lamar and Lacy the same because Lacy's touches have not been there.
Yeah.
So
they have been improving.
With Starks having knee surgery, I think Lacy is a guy I would buy right now.
Even with the injury?
Yeah. I'm going to get a great value on Lacy.
All right, Captain 11 snap. Ryan Matthews, 9 for 60. He got 11 snaps. He was out-touched by Wendell Smallwood by 1. Or he either out-touched Smallwood by 1 or Smallwood out-touched him by 1. I know that for a fact. And then by far the leader in snaps was Darren Sproles.
Yeah, and the reason why is because if you watch that game, Washington hopped out to the 2-score lead in the blink of an eye, and so now they were behind and they were passing. That was Darren Sproles' game. He got involved. Ryan Matthews still ran well. He got 9 carries for 60 yards. That's 6.66 yards a carry. But he got game flowed out, and what that says is important to understand. He can get game flowed out. His upcoming schedule isn't necessarily the best, so if you can get value for him, I was saying last week, trade him.
Yeah, he plays Minnesota, Dallas, and the Giants on the season. The last 4 games, 9 attempts, 2 attempts, 11 attempts, 9 attempts. I'm out.
Yeah,
I am OUT. I was out before the season, but I'm and then the only game he succeeded in, Cleveland. It was Cleveland at home.
It's very well.
He saved his second game, the 9
Last
for 32
week was
games.
Still pretty good.
Last week he had a great game.
Last week was good
because he was involved in
I
the
will say
passing
this.
game.
I do not blame you at all, but I think this is it's red alert for Ryan Matthews for sure. But the Eagles' offense as a whole the last 2 weeks has been really bad. The only reason they were in this game is because Wendell Smallwood ran a punt back, and then they
got the pick six.
They had a pick 6. That's why they were in the game.
We are running out of time on the show today, so what I'm going to do here with some of these remaining poop candidates is I'm going to give you their names, and I just want to know if you consider it an outlier, bad week, or something to be concerned about. So just tell me if you're concerned or not. Carlos Hyde.
Outlier.
Yeah, not concerned.
Isaiah Crowell.
Concern.
Growing concern.
Jeremy Hill.
Par for the course.
This is what he is.
Rashad Jennings.
Outlier. Not worried at all.
Yeah.
This is a good run D. He's back from injury.
Yeah.
So you're buying Rashad Jennings?
Yes. I just bought Rashad Jennings.
Antonio Brown. We're moving over to the wide receivers. Antonio Brown.
Hey, people need to know. I will say this real quick. People are worried because of the Big Ben thing and saying, should I trade him? Should I trade him? Because without Big Ben, he's not the same fantasy-wise. But Big Ben should only miss a couple weeks. I'm a little bit worried about Antonio Brown. Whether or not you should trade him is this. You can trade him, but you better be getting a David Johnson, a Julio Jones. There's like 3 or 4 guys.
Here's who trades him. The team that trades Antonio Brown is the team that needs to win in the next 2 weeks. To save your season, because one Landry Jones and one bye week. So if you can flip him for a guy post-bye, or, you got to get a haul for Antonio Brown, but that's the person that I would categorize. Look, Will Fuller and Sammy Coates were both active and both did nothing.
Yeah. It was rough for Coates. I mean, we weren't sure if he was going to be active, and then he was a surprise active. And then they scaled him way back, and the entire Pittsburgh offense was bad.
Hypothetically, if you were somebody that went out and spent money on Fab for Sammy Coates last week, you can't be liking your decision because you have
with Big Ben out.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying you had this week the injury, you didn't get to play him, and if you did, you were burned, which a lot of people did, by the way. People played him because they saw him running out of the tunnel, and the tweets were going out there.
Yeah,
so people played him. Then you've got you still have the injury. You have Landry Jones, and you have a bye week. Now you have to hold the guy you spent a bunch of fab money on.
Yeah. It's not. I
can agree with that.
Not a great situation.
Crabtree.
Not worried at all.
Worried,
that was a hurricane.
Demarius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders.
Man, those guys crapped my rankings. I'm just saying. I feel good about my rankings this week, except the Broncos receivers on you. I'm not too worried, though, going forward. I think Trevor Siemian, he only had 4 days to get ready. He was still dealing with the left shoulder injury.
I would say he had 2 weeks to get ready.
He was not practicing for the previous.
Right, but they had talked about it.
He had 4 practices.
He had
4 practices to get ready. I think we can all agree on that.
Also under the spotlights. Hadn't been out there like that quite as much.
We'll see.
Doug Baldwin.
I'm just saying, the Broncos, the last couple of weeks, their offense, maybe people are figuring some things out.
I'm not worried about Doug Baldwin at all. If you are, trade him to me.
Let's talk after the show.
Okay.
Julian Edelman.
I don't know, man.
Hasn't done it.
2 weeks in a row.
Can't win with him.
Yeah.
Can't play with him.
We've had 2 weeks of Brady, and I don't know. I don't know what to think of Edelman right now, because last week you had Hogan and Martellus Bennett were everything, and this week it was Gronk and Julian Edelman.
And James White.
Right. And and the James White touchdowns, you thought, okay, well, maybe this is going to Edelman. I'm a hold for now.
Do you know,
but
I think Edelman might be more effective in those actual competitive games.
Yeah, I agree.
Where they need a catch. I don't know.
That's
Allen
fair.
Robinson.
Not worried.
I want to know about Allen Robinson.
I have a little worry. Look, he beats up on,
You just said that the Bears are a tough passing defense.
They are.
I'm not concerned.
But why did he disappear?
These things happen.
Yeah, these
we
things
know
have been
that
happening a lot. I'm not crazy concerned. The one thing I would say, I believe they've got a terrible playoff schedule. And so for a guy like that that's going to give you boom games, going to give you crap games, and not going to be there to really come through this year in the playoffs. Like last year, his playoff schedule was amazing.
All right, T.Y. Hilton and Jeremy Maclin. Any concern for either of those guys?
T.Y. Hilton still had 9 targets.
Maclin was in the rain.
Yeah,
they were up. They ran the ball like crazy.
Maclin, that's
concerns.
par for what I think of Maclin.
Sure.
Yeah.
So. All right, real quick, through the tight ends, Delanie Walker.
What happened?
Seriously, man. Seriously. Come on. The Cleveland Browns, I'll tell you what happened is Kendall Wright took a couple of the entire early offensive drives away from anyone else because he just ran touchdowns in from across the field, and then they ran the ball. But it stinks. Delanie Walker, not worried moving forward, but he crapped. I'm more worried about Zach Ertz moving forward.
Ertz.
Very worried.
Ouch. All right, Julius Thomas.
Julius Thomas.
He's whatever.
He's in the Barfy tight ends.
Travis Kelce.
Not worried going forward. Again, that was a complete hurricane game.
Well,
I don't.
This is Kelce though. This is what we get from Kelce. You're gonna get these 3 for 32s every now and then because that's what their offense does.
We're gonna get into more of these guys. We're gonna talk. You know, if you didn't hear a name like Tevin Coleman, we're gonna get into these guys this week. So hang tight. We're over an hour here on the show, so we got to wrap it up. But the Monday night game tonight, you've got everybody's favorite,
the Cardinals.
I was really looking. That's what I was looking for there, guys.
I did not know where you were going.
All right, you've got Fitzgerald, John Brown, Michael Floyd, tonight's game. And then you have Marshall matched up with probably Patrick Peterson for most of the game on the other side. Is this a game where Enunwa would be a very sneaky start?
Yeah, I like Enunwa here.
Possibly. I think Marshall will be okay.
Austin Seferian-Jenkins as well might do something here.
This is just a game to see what ASJ has on Monday night before you go out and maybe he's in waivers tomorrow because of that. So we got to wrap it up here. We'll be back tomorrow. Check out jointhefoot.com for our fantasy football community. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for supporting the show.
And fantasyjocks.com where winners go. Use the promo code footballers. If you're at the game and see us, say hello.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Join our fantasy football community on jointhefoot.com and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.